Welcome traders, Adam Harris here. So just doing my weekly analysis. I'm doing it on a Saturday, but for the week, Monday, that would be Monday the 8th of November. Wow, we're just hurtling towards Christmas, aren't we? So having a look at high impact news coming up this week. This will be mostly what I'm will just be kind of wary of. Monday, potentially some increased volatility always around inflation fears, and this coming up both the US and the UK. Other than that, nothing really too much of a concern at this time. We're past non-farm payroll, and yes, maybe potentially on Thursday there'll be something in the middle of the night, but most of my trading will be done between let's call it 6:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. UK time, so not really anticipating too much of a concern, possibly with the exception of say Wednesday. All right, and on that note, let's head across to the charts and have a look at what's going on there. Okay, so looking at the VIX, we're really still operating around the lows, and yet there have been some really big moves in the market. There's been some good money-making opportunities. So not really expecting much of this to change. Would be interested to see if we do push a little bit higher, but I think actually let's just move away from that at this point in time. Looking at the dollar index, so really there is clearly some resistance here at 94.50. The dollar overall, the flow is very much to the upside. All right, so I'm just noting that 10 is about to cross over the 20. That weekly is looking a little bit more bullish. We have created some fresh highs on that, so this uptrend is still intact. And actually just looking at this, we had on the monthly, we had a big move up, and we've just really had sort of two small consolidation candles, and this can often lead to a breakout. So if we do get a breakout, we're going to surge towards 95. So that's going to be interesting to me to see if that happens. I'll be keeping an eye on that. If you look across here at euro, US dollar, that's actually sitting on a little bit of a major support level, certainly just below 1.16. But historically, certainly that level is, or the area where it is now, is relatively significant. We've also produced kind of lower lows on that weekly. We've got a nice weekly downtrend. Each of these candles so far is producing lower highs, lower lows. So we are just edging that a little bit further down. I can see here, though, that we do have a bullish candle that we closed on Friday. We do have this level of support here on the daily, and we do have this bullish divergence. Okay, so all of this indicating there's going to be the potential for it to push back up, but the flow is slowly but surely edging it over the side. So whether we do see a break below that this week or whether it ends up being next week is going to be, I guess, what's of interest. What I'll be looking for, if that is the case, if we do break below this and hold, I'll be looking for nice sells on euro, US dollar, GBP, US dollar as well. Looking at cable here, potential level of daily support here. We'll see if we get a rejection and a follow through this week, in the early part of this week, pushing up a little bit higher. But overall, it does look as though that US dollar is just slowly but surely marching forward, and therefore there could just be, we could see that continuation of dollar strength this coming week. Looking here at Australian dollar, US dollar. So this is interesting to me. We've got this weekly uptrend here. We've got a strong correction to the downside. We don't really have a clear direction per se. We do have higher lows on the monthly here. We've got some strong rejection at these levels of 77.50, and it is attempting to push higher, but it's going to be difficult for it to do that if that dollar strength does indeed show up. So what I'll be looking for is any breaks below these major levels here. If we do potentially, if we do get some temporary weakness, or the euro decides to push back, then there'll be, I would expect that Australian dollar, US dollar to climb up, and there'd be some good money making opportunities to the upside there. And then having a look at Kiwi dollar, US dollar, there's no doubt for me that although it is trending high, it is producing high lows, high highs, it is also still stuck very much within a range, and there's also some more room to come back down to the downside, and it's been largely range bound as well. So not really the most ideal one in terms of money-making opportunities here. Looking at dollar yen, this actually potentially hinting at a deeper correction to the downside, and therefore that's supporting actually dollar weakness. But dollar yen does tend to do its own thing. I'm just looking at a little bit of a bearish inside monthly candle this weekly, just doing a bit of a consolidation and pushing a little bit low. This could potentially, as I said, could be a bear flag and would break a little bit higher. But for the most part, this is not looking strong. It actually looks as though it really wants to it does really want to break low. And a lot of the yen crosses that I'm going to discuss on my currencies pairs of interest today may actually be offering some good money-making opportunities this week for day traders. Moving over, having a look at dollar Swissy again, this overall certainly looks way more bearish. It's broken these recent lows here. The recent daily Friday candle close looking nice and bearish. Well, the close not really being that strong to the downside, but overall also not looking bullish. It's looking rather weak. The monthly here also just drifting higher, very sort of very sort of meh in its approach, its philosophy. This actually does now look like it wants to hit a little bit low. So kind of dollar yen, dollar Swissy indicating the potential here for dollar weakness. Quite interesting. which supports the idea of euro being able to hold its ground. So really right now it's going to come down to what is the euro capable of doing, and it has been inherently weak. When we look at some of the euro crosses in a moment, they are looking relatively weak. So here looking at dollar CAD, it has come back up into this area of potential resistance. This is something this whole week I was sort of waiting for that. We've come back into this area, and therefore if it does, there might be some good shorting opportunities here. If that dollar weakness does actually resume, I'll be looking for that. Potential trading moves to the downside, not offering. It's got a downtrend here of lower highs, lower lows on the weekly, and not really offering much clarity on the monthly. So that might be a potential trading opportunity there on the higher time frames. There haven't really been a lot otherwise. Now, moving on to the currency pairs of interest to me, I was just going to talk here very quickly about the yen crosses. So overall, many of these yen crosses look as though they do still have some room to move to the downside. Euro yen possibly offering some intraday opportunities back down to 130.50. If I compare that to, say, pound yen as well, pound yen actually having been a lot weaker, so GBP having been a lot weaker the last few days, and that pushing right down into these levels over here, so there might still be some good shorting opportunities there. And then just Aussie yen as well, breaking through this band of resistance that it's had in the past. It's starting to move through it. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to remove that, and actually showing there's some potential, still more potential to the downside. And I think it's now worthwhile adding at a level of significant resistance over here. Okay, so I'm just going to chuck that in over there. I think that would count. CAD yen as well here, lower highs, lower lows, nice downtrend on the daily, nicely overextended on the weekly, starting to look pretty bearish there. And so yes, the possibility, we'll see if it can hold at this 91 level. So potentially this level of support might still hold. Might find the yen pairs all of a sudden find their feet and then start to recover, but right now they look like they've still got some way or some further, a little bit further down that they wish to kind of explore a little bit further. I'm not sure why I'm struggling with the words today. I'm not sure what's wrong with me. Maybe it's just too early in the weekend. So yes, so I'm looking for further downside trades on these yen pairs, but you know they had such a really big bullish move here. It's possible that that is still very much in play. So I'm keeping an eye out for both potential opportunities, but my starting point is going to be looking for continued sells, at least on intraday. On an intraday basis. Okay, going back to the other euro pairs, euro Swissy, obviously having moved down quite a bit, and the further down it goes, the more there's some potential risk for S&B to step in. I don't know in which way they would do that this time, because they've failed, terribly in the past at doing, the right thing for these pairs. And so I'm not really convinced unless you do, but I would like to keep an ear to the ground just to see if there's any murmurs of discontent or malcontent from the S&B about the continued strengthening of the Swiss franc over the euro. So there could be some intraday buying opportunities if we do hit a level of support and we do see a strong reversal on the 4-hour time frame. In the meantime, or until such time, I'm looking for continuations of this to the downside. Euro CAD. Okay, so this one is actually where I'm looking for a break to the upside, but I do want to see a break above these previous highs and do it in a really convincing manner. Nice solid daily candle closing above this level would be a convincing sign to me. We are a little bit overextended on the monthly, so a correction back to the upside could do it as well. Also back up to the weekly, back up into 1.4618. So actually, of the ones I've had a look at so far, Euro CAD buys above that 44.32 level, or at least above these previous highs, could be really good opportunities for intraday trading. EURUSD. So it's really this big bounce back up here. It's at a potential monthly level of support here, that also that weekly. So we've got a really nice weekly momentum candle, the strong moves to the upside, nice bit of volume up there, and therefore continuation to the upside. There could be some good moves up to 1.59. So that's certainly on my watch list for intraday trading to the upside. Pound Aussie, interestingly enough, looking quite a bit weaker, but that's of course because GBP is looking weaker. So there could be a continuation here to the downside. Pound Kiwi, almost certainly continuation to the downside. We've got outside of this range, so I can remove that now. Really nice, solid closing right near the lows. Really nice and bearish. There could be some good continuations to the downside there. And then Aussie yen and CAD yen, as I said, looking for those potential sells a little bit further down on some of those yen crosses. And that's it on currency pairs of interest. Let's move across and have a look at precious metals, starting with gold. Gold is looking nice and bullish at the moment. So I'm just noted that in the past, certainly we've been stuck within this range, and so there's no doubt in my mind that sort of 1834 could present some potential resistance here, but this is a really bullish candle. I love the look of that. Monthly so far, you can see here is actually building up to a potential. I'm just going to kind of mark this area here as a potential flat level breakout. Okay, so there could be a consolidation consolidation or breakout ahead of this. So that's something for me to keep an eye on, and that would include this area here. So I want to see if there's some big moves up to these highs here, and then potentially a break above that. But certainly once above 1850, that becomes significantly more bullish. So that looks quite interesting. But until we get there, until we're out of that range, I'm still exercising some caution there. Looking at silver, that is a very nice weekly bullish candle. You could argue this is an inverted head and shoulders potentially setting up here. Certainly looks more bearish than bullish. I love that monthly rejection. There we go. We've got a volume momentum candle down, momentum candle up, and a bullish, currently a bullish monthly candle. So I think it's fair to say that gold and silver are now back on my watch list for buying opportunities this week, just keeping an eye up to major levels, just in terms of there being a possible rejection of those levels. There might, there's no way we can't predict the future. There might still not be enough buyers above these levels like there weren't here and they weren't here to take it over the line. I'm just saying that right now it seems like it's very keen on going back up to those levels. Moving on to crude oil. So crude oils have started a bit of a correction to the downside on the weekly. The only problem is there's lots of buyers in principle. There's still more buyers, there's still plenty of buyers at this point. And so the correction is struggling to kind of just let go and come back down towards 75, which would be very nice for it to do, in order to let off some of this buying pressure and then start to resume back up to 75. So I'm a little cautious, but actually noting how we are coming back into previous daily support. And so this week, what I'll be looking for is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, looking to see if we find some resistance here and if there's a continuation down towards 75. And if there is, there'll be some good intraday shorting opportunities on both Brent and crude. This is just bouncing for level of support, but this is really the key thing, is it going to struggle to find resistance, and there might even be some potential swing trades on the higher time frames down if it does. On the other hand, of course, if it just breaks back up above that, then that might just be another indication of how bullish it is going forwards, and therefore the weekly is ready to resume. But I would like to see a further correction to the downside. Moving on to the global indices, having a look at these. Of course, it was lovely last week. They continued the previous weeks, the week before last, this most recent week continued last week's or the previous week's bullishness. It continued to the upside. Yes, at some point I'm now expecting some healthy corrections back into the moving averages or back down into the old highs to test for support. But this is still looking nice and healthy. So all of the characteristics that I spoke about last week, that mean the markets are still nice and healthy. They are still here. And so what I'm really expecting from here are healthy, normal, natural, healthy pullbacks. No signs of weakness creeping in just yet, and looking for buying opportunities to the upside. Let's look at the S&P. Also, I mean, this is ridiculous, this kind of a move from here to here. We are now absolutely, in my mind, overdue for at least a daily retracement or daily correction. Just keeping that in mind, I'm still principally bullish, but I'd love to see a nice healthy correction to provide some buying opportunities. Nasdaq as well. All of these have just surged to new highs, and at some point that is going to cost us. The bill is going to come due. Again, look at the mini Russell. Look how beautifully bullish this is. This is significant. Okay, so we spoke about this in the past as being a potential here for this to be a consolidation and a breakout. The fact that the Russell is actually now broken out, we'll see how this week goes if we get another correction below here. But at first glance, this actually hints at the idea that the growth in the market is maybe here to stay for a little bit longer. Okay, is here for now. So we might have that Santa Claus rally, so we might actually continue from now through till March, but usually we have a bit of a correction. But, I'm looking at this, and so far, all of this appears to be that's just the world we're in right now, that it is really, really bullish and becoming more and more optimistic. But one of the many, many, many symptoms of a bubble is when absolutely everybody is getting in on the market. The expression used to be, when the shoeshine boy is giving you stock tips, that's when that's when you should probably be exiting your positions. And anecdotally, there is definitely a fervor, the word being this kind of, another similar word would be like a fever that is kind of generally permeating most social circles that I know of, about getting involved in the markets and getting there. So if that holds true, then we are certainly in that bubble, and we might be nearing we might be nearing the end of it. But technically, the charts look strong. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Looking at the DAX as well, breaking to new highs. These are nice, strong bullish signs. Euro stocks as well, breaking to new highs, looking really good. Nikkei, let's have a look at that, managing to recover a little bit. So that's a nice little bullish finish that might be leading up, working up towards old highs and finishing off with the Australian ASX. This beautiful little bit of indecision candle here. If we break the high of, October, all of that looking nice and bullish and expecting to go up to old highs. So I guess just to sum up, looking at the indices, the bullish sentiment and everything that I discussed about last week, I'm going to just copy and paste it over to this week. All of it seems to be there. Yes, certainly, on the daily, we are now absolutely overdue for a daily retracement, daily correction. We need one. We do need the markets to just take a breather, just calm down. The longer they go unrestrained like this, the bigger they're going to fall when they do ultimately have that correction. So I'd like to see that this week, but as I said, at this point in time, I'm still more waiting for buying opportunities than selling opportunities, and not really seeing much divergence, not really seeing any icebergs on the horizon, other than the general inflationary concerns with the market feels is not a problem. It's future markets problem, or it's next year's markets problem. That just seems to be what's going on here. Okay, let's have a look at Royal Mail. Let's go through to the equities of interest. You can see here, there was that little bit of indecision candle. We've broken to the upside here. So this is going to be of interest to me looking at this. I want to see a really bullish, larger candle close this week here, if that's the case, because you can see there's a bit of a bearish candle set up here. This might be looking to head lower. So this is an interesting thing. We've got that downtrend overall, that downtrend on the weekly. We've got a bit of an uptrend on the daily, potential for an uptrend to continue on the monthly. In isolation, the monthly, this is a good place for it to resume its uptrend. The weekly looks like a nice, happy, healthy downtrend, and we've got a bit of an uptrend on the daily. So what do I need to see? Well, I need to ultimately see a break of this high here to see a continuation to the upside. Conversely, if there's a big drop to the downside, that will support the idea of a weekly thing. It's stuck between conflicting trends on multiple timeframes here, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards it, at least certainly attempting to go a little bit higher. Here we go. There's a potential buying opportunity here for me on Amex. Last week's candle, it's got to break through this level of resistance, but that is a potential buy signal. And it looks like it's disregarding the collapse over here, at least, sorry, that failure that we've had. I really kind of feel confident. I want to see it get past 178.60. 178.60, which is, here. So this week, if we can break and close above that, that's also supports a bullish sign. Let's look at ARK Innovation. I would have expected more. I've been historically kind of bullish on this, optimistic on it. I really would have expected this to recover really well. If everything else has been booming, this one should have been making leaps and bounds, and it hasn't. What it has managed to do is get back up and test this resistance. I'd like to see it break 126 this week, head up to 130. Let's see how that goes. Berkshire Hathaway coming up towards the top of its range. It's had a consolidation. I'm not really sure if this is ready to break out and continue to the upside just yet, but certainly that is it is letting off some of this buying pressure by having a bit of a consolidation. So that is not really a sign of weakness at this time. It's struggling a bit with 291, but I think if ARK Innovation can break a little bit higher, why can't Berkshire Hathaway? So let's have a look at that. BP. Okay, BP coming back into these old highs. So this is what I'm going to be looking for this week. Potential bullish recovery or bullish signal here off these previous highs might provide itself with a nice buying opportunity next week. So let's see if that's the case there. Obviously, as I'm saying that all of this could just, in all of these ones I've just spoken about, if they don't produce that bullish candle this week, then of course, obviously, then that negates any potential setups. These are not things I'm going to trade this week. These are setups that I'm going to have to wait until next week to see if they then offer setups for the following week. But here's the thing. With the indices looking the way they are, I'm taking the glass is half full approach that now are the best possible conditions for those types of bullish setups to evolve. Looking here at Coca-Cola, for example, that's at a nice little level here. Could be interesting to see if that breaks through that. So it's broken the low here, pushing through. This implies a monthly setup here. We had a really nice bullish volume candle here. We're not done yet, so I want to see if we could break through that level to the upside. Okay, ExxonMobil will be almost the same approach as BP, but this overall, that uptrend is continuing. I want to see if it can, there's just a little bit of signs of potential depletion here. I'd need to see, instead of a breakdown back below this, because that's not really a great sign, I'd want to see a full bullish candle to the upside. So ExxonMobil, some depletion here, which implies that it might fail to do that. So that's interesting to see that. General Motors, see how many of these are coming back into these levels of resistance. Okay, so this week I want to see if they can make it past it. But overall, again here, the last week, GM's last week's performance, really strong, nice and healthy and bullish, showing the potential to break a little bit higher. JP Morgan. Okay, a little bit of signs of some sort of weakness and exhaustion. It has to come back down and test these levels again. So the question is, can it bounce off those levels again? It's struggling here, no doubt about that. So actually, this hinting of the possibility here that it wants to come down a little bit first, possibly have a nice recovery by the end of the week. Let's see how that goes. So quite a, as I kind of go further down the list, there are some signs that there might be some failure this coming week. Okay, they might not be able to break through those levels, but if they do, again, that supports the idea of further bullishness or continued bullishness. So I want to see if this can hold. Again, it's consolidating, but a nice correction down to 90 would be fantastic for Morgan Stanley. It's had a really good run. I'd like to see it led off some of that steam and then recover and then be back up there. But that not looking as strong just yet. Apple here looking just fine. It's had a nice pull down, correction back down, a retest of this level of resistance for support. For support. Now looking to continue on that weekly candle. It's an inside candle, but doesn't look weak. There's some potential signs of some resistance in this area. Otherwise, it looks okay. NVIDIA, super strong. Nice little signal here of a potential correction this coming week. Okay, but overall, phenomenally healthy so far. We're really at the beginning of November, so I don't really know what's going to happen, or early part of November. I would be interested to see if that closes as a bearish candle. So it's quite interesting. We've got so much bullishness, and then if this week we get a really big correction, that because we are now due for a correction on the dailies, on the indices at the very least, that might be just a sign that we get a bigger correction. But overall, the underlying structure of the market, certainly at this time, appears to be quite strong. Okay, so yeah, there's just a big move up and closing near the highs. Overall, this still looks pretty strong. A nice little healthy correction and then a continuation. That would be my plan A on this. PayPal just breaking through these fresh lows. What's going on? The area in which it's at now, I'd like to see a kind of, if we can, okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to mark this off as a box because this could potentially be all that it is. So let's just do that. Let's frame that. And if that is the case, if this is going to be range bound, this is going to find support where it is now. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. Turn around this week off this level. Should it break below that, then there's something clearly going on. Then I would want to find out what the hell is going on at PayPal. Why? What's going on with management, almost certainly with management. That would be my thing. First thing. Tesla's obviously continued break. This is a smaller monthly candle, so it's usually a sign of a bit of not exhaustion, but a little bit of slowing down, losing a little bit of momentum. No real signs of exhaustion here. A nice little healthy pullback and a recovery could happen. You could have a drop for a couple of days and then recover and finish up high for the week. So not expecting another surge on Tesla at this time. I would say the biggest one happened in October. We've had a smaller November, not expecting too much more than that. Spider, let's have a look at this one. Again, kind of recovering, and this may well just be range bound. So let's mark that range off to define it, which is actually there. Let's put in the lows. In fact, I would almost say that it's probably more like that, and see what happens here within these ranges. But so far, it looks as though it's keen to push a little bit high, etc. Look at this move down. So at a deep correction, consolidation, month down, month up, month down, month up. The average price just flowing through here, a bit of an indecision candle, now a bullish candle. So it's at a really good point now to start pushing a little bit higher. I'd like to see one monthly candle here that closes near the highs, not like this, even better than this. Closing near the highs would be a bullish, very bullish continuation signal. And last one on the list, excuse me, Vanguard, just continuing its bullishness again. These are really overdue for a deeper correction back down towards the moving averages. Really need these guys to now let off some of that steam. Overall, they're looking nice and healthy, but we need some buying opportunities on the dailies. We need those dailies to do a correction back towards the moving averages. Right, moving on to the treasuries. Okay, so there's a little bit of buying coming here. I want to note that because last week I spoke about there not being much interest in them. This would so far constitute a relatively decent monthly candle on a higher low. And so actually this could be that's of interest to me. All right, speaking of the fact that maybe there's an anticipation of the market's dropping a little bit, there might be a move towards these. Let's have a look at the euro ones. Euro one, there we go. Look at this really big strong recovery this week, completely demolished this downtrend on the daily. Really, really big move here. I would pay attention to this, folks. I would pay attention to that. That to me, this is significant. In fact, this is the single biggest move to the upside that I've seen in a long time, going back to January last year. That's ridiculous. So this is significant. Taking everything we've been through to get to where we are now, I'd be paying attention to that. Let's look at the euro bund. Also, big bullish engulfing candle, really big weekly candle, completely destroyed this weekly downtrend. That momentum has now shifted from bearish to bullish. Okay, it's not an uptrend yet. There's no high low, high yet, but that momentum sentiment appears to have shifted bullish. Okay, and so it looks as though they're going to, it makes sense to me now to see a bit of a continuation. It might be a move back down to these highs to test those before continuing to the upside, but that is worthwhile noting. That will be in my intro thing. Let's move on to cryptos. So just to, yeah, that's fine. But that'll be, sorry, to sum up, basically looking now at this, I would say, looking at the big interest that has now walked into or started to inject itself into the treasuries with the daily overextension and the just continued ridiculous bullishness of the markets, there could be a shift this coming week. Just taking that into account, just adds a little bit of caution and interest on that. All right, cryptos. So what do you see here? There's just this bird's nest, complete mess over here around the 60,000. This is right now is just where Bitcoin is happy to be this week. Wasn't expecting much over the last week. Look at this, not expecting much more here. You can see there is exhaustion coming in here. Nice little depletion and failure. Break below this or a big strong bearish move to the downside, but just move back down to 50. Okay, and it's fine because we can't have things continue to inflate at the percentage growth rates or the rates, insane growth we've had is not sustainable. Okay, there's no argument that can say that it is. We're just in, as we said, we know in a bit of a bubble at the moment, and it's interesting to me. We're just starting to see cryptos just flatten out a bit. We're starting to see a move towards into some treasuries. Stocks are ridiculously bullish. This could be significant. Okay, so I want to mark that in today's webinar. Just talk about that. Ethereum starting to just creep a little bit high, but look at this. Okay, so there's a move up, drop down, move up, drop down, move up, drop down. It's running out of steam towards the top end and really hasn't moved that much up from its old previous highs in May. So look, it looks pretty steady. I can expect it to continue, but also at the same time, if it did happen this week to have a bigger correction to the downside, I'd be okay with that. I wouldn't be surprised. Neo, let's have a look at that. Neo not going anywhere. Look at that. So usually we'll get a breakout after a consolidation like this. The question is, will it be to the upside or the downside? Cardano continuing to look relatively weak, looking very weak over here as well, looking pretty weak over here. Okay, so no signs of strength at this time, and Ripple as well tried and failed over the last week. It's creeping up. So what we're getting here clearly with cryptos is it's almost as though it's saturated. Like there's nobody else that's really kind of hopping in at the moment. There's no real significant buyers entering the market. And now you're going to probably have professionals making a call. Are they going to withdraw some of their cash flow from this? Are they going to reduce their exposure? Or is there going to be something maybe in the rest of the markets that's going to cause them to go, you know what, actually I'm going to put some of my portfolio out of stocks and move some of it into cryptos. Let's see how that goes this week. But right now there's nothing from this really signaling much interest. Ladies and gents, that is it. So that's quite interesting. Just a very quick recap. Taking into account that, you know, we put the dollar, euro, dollar as well on a not a cliff edge, but on the edge of a range. Are they going to break? Are we going to see some renewed trends this week? We've got volatility relatively low, but we've had some big moves in the market. We have got some. So now what we do have is a really significant bullish movement occurring in the bonds and treasuries, and therefore could that with at the same time with stocks really some of the stocks, individual equities not actually breaking higher, they're not really going anywhere, and they could potentially go a little bit lower, but we've got the indices all looking ridiculously bullish, overextended on the daily. Could we have a bit of a correction coming this week? Not the end of the bull market per se, but just a bit of a correction this week, and if so, that just means I'll exercise some caution. So my buying opportunities, I won't be risking a full 1%, but probably anything right down to 0.1%, 0.2% per position. That's it. Folks, have a fantastic week, and I will see you next week.